Welcome. Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. Coronavirus mode, Zoom, not in the studio. And we have, well, before we get to our guest, I hope you all know I'm Roberta Saphire, an attorney in Sharon. And
I am Camille
yes,
Barron, a healthcare advisor and financial coordinator, also in Sharon, Massachusetts. And I'm very happy to introduce today our guest in our continuing series of coronavirus conversations, Dianne Savastano. Dianne is founder and CEO of Healthassist, which is an organization that guides people through the complexities of the healthcare system.
which we
Dianne, would you
all
like to
need.
tell us a little bit? We
Yeah.
all need, right.
We
Dianne,
all
would you
need
tell us a
very
little bit about
badly.
yourself?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh,
Thank
great.
you for
Okay.
being
Well,
with
thank
us.
you.
So,
Thank you so much for having me today. So I founded Healthassist in 2004, and I saw a need out there for people who really needed some guidance through our incredibly complex healthcare system. My past lives, I've had many. One includes, or I began my career as a nurse, and so I have clinical knowledge that really guides me through my work now. But I also have experience in the world of insurance and managed care and employee benefits. So I view the healthcare consumer from the seat of all of those various stakeholders as I guide them through the healthcare system.
Great.
how do people call you? I mean, I never heard of such a service until recently, but I can see it's needed.
Well, we are still an emerging industry. Even though I've been doing this for 15 years, I do now have cohorts across the country. We have a national association. Over the years, I've reached out to many people, and I do a monthly newsletter, so I stay in touch with them. So referrals often come to me from previous clients and their families, which is, of course, the best type of situation. But I also work a lot with attorneys. I work with elder law attorneys. I work with estate planning attorneys. I work with a lot of financial advisors. Just because sometimes when people have these needs, they are also communicating with those other professionals in their lives.
I have a question. How does this relate? How does it change with the pandemic going on? What's the differences now?
Well, it's not that it's not that it's that much different, but we have moved into obviously very much of a prevention mode and sort of an emergency mode. We have a large cohort of clients that we wanted to be sure were ready for this. So we reached out to those clients right away and started to talk with them about prevention strategies and really tried to help them plan and problem solve. And the reason I say this is that we work with clients who are at various stages of functional ability, let's say. So we have some clients who are young, who have complex chronic medical conditions, complicated situations. They're a little bit more independent with doing certain things. But our most vulnerable clients are those clients who live in the community. They may be a little bit older, and my definition of older is people are older adults until they're over 85, or they're adults until they're over 85, and then over 85 they're older adults. So we have a lot of older adults in our cohort of clients, but many of them still live in the community, and some live with no family members around at all. So we really tried to reach out to each of our individual clients to see what kind of a situation they're in and plan for prevention, of course, of this virus, but then also do some extensive planning about what if they had symptoms, what if they needed a test, what if they needed to be evaluated, and what if they needed to go to the hospital. So that's how we've kind of morphed and changed in the last few weeks. Now, we normally do all this type of work, but now we were focused specifically around this virus and how it could impact their lives.
You're like a personal medical assistant.
Well, yeah, people call us a lot of different things. Some people call us private case managers. Other people call us advocates. I sometimes call myself a rent-a-daughter because these are all the same things that I do for my parents.
Oh.
Maybe, Dianne, maybe just backing up a moment, just get kind of an overview of what an advocate does And then we can sort of expand that with now in the stage of the coronavirus, how has that been changed, or what more do you do?
Yes.
Sure. So, in our normal course of work, again, we normally have people who come to us who have pretty complex medical situations. And so oftentimes if we're meeting them in a non-emergency situation, we do a lot of, we interview them, of course, and we do a lot of organizing of their medical information, their medical records. We also begin to attend doctor's appointments with them so that we know all of their medical team. But before we even go to doctor's appointments, we help our clients create an agenda so that when they go to the doctors, they have a really fulfilling experience because they go in outlining their expectations of themselves and their doctor, and they have good discussions. And then, following those appointments, we review all of the action items that need to occur, and then we help them facilitate whatever needs to happen next.
Yeah, I remember when I would go to the doctor for a reason, and then when you get there, they go, "How are you?" You go, "Fine." You totally forget what you're there for. You should go with a list.
Exactly. And, we use the premise, we use tools we use in business every day. We use a written agenda because you should be thinking ahead about what the objective is of your visit. You should write it down, and then you should have agenda items and have a list of questions and summarize your meeting. And we actually encourage our clients to share that written agenda with their physician at the beginning of the meeting so that they run their own meeting. We even help them practice the words to say, I came here today for a particular reason, and I want to be sure to, go over these agenda items. So we do a lot of coaching as to how to even conduct yourself in a meeting with your physician so that you get your needs met. In the event someone is hospitalized, we actually go to the hospital and we interact with all of the important players because we're planning for someone's discharge from the moment they're hospitalized because hospitalizations and discharges happen quick. For some people, they might be going right home and not needing any care at home. But again, for some of our very vulnerable and complex clients, there might be a lot of steps in between. For example, they might need to go to a skilled nursing facility for a period of time for some short-term rehabilitation. And maybe when they come home with home care services, and those all need to be coordinated. Or maybe they need to hire private services in their home, and those all need to be coordinated. So we do all of that for our clients. At the same time, we interface with their insurance companies to be sure that they are living within the confines and requirements of their health insurance plans, and we troubleshoot any issues that might come up. Sometimes things require prior authorization, or sometimes after the fact there are some complex claims that might need questioning. So we really do whatever our clients need us to do.
You sound like a cross between the doctor's assistants, an estate planner, and their attorney.
So what's kind of interesting for us and how I'd say we are different yes, all of those things come together. Sometimes we need the attorney, sometimes we need the financial advisor. When I describe what we do, I usually say that we go through every transition with a client and we're with them every step of the way. We're there before they need any health care to help them prepare and plan. If they need health care in a doctor's office, we're there. If they get transitioned to a hospital, we're there. If we get transitioned to a skilled nursing facility there and back home, or maybe an alternative living arrangement needs to occur. So we go with them every step of the way, where a physician, will be with them when they're in the doctor's office, but they're not even with them when they're in the hospital. So
my niece in Arizona, she does she's a patient's advocate. Would you say that this sounds like even more than a patient's advocate?
Yeah, there's a lot of different terminology for what we do, because sometimes patient advocates, we call ourselves that too, but sometimes patient advocates work within particular settings. So there are patient advocates in the hospital setting, there are patient advocates in the skilled nursing facility setting or in the public health setting, but those people don't really stick with you through every transition. So we are a consistent force all the way through.
Interesting.
Right. So now, Dianne, let's expand this conversation and let's talk a little bit about today during this pandemic. How is your practice changed, or how is it embellished now with the introduction of the coronavirus? How does that affect how you handle your clients now?
Yes, so we're really capitalizing on what we've always put in place. One of the things that we focus a lot on is your relationship with your primary care physician. And it is very important during this pandemic that you appreciate what it is you would need to do in the event you became symptomatic. So what we have done is we have proactively reached out to the primary care practices for each of our clients. And one of the things that we're learning is that every practice is doing things a little differently. States are doing things a little differently. Things are constantly evolving. So what we were doing 2 weeks ago has changed because testing has become a little bit better, a little bit more readily available. So first and foremost, we've been reaching out proactively to the primary care physicians to say, tell us what your process is if our client becomes symptomatic. Many of them have really gotten their act together and are very organized. They suggest that people communicate either by calling or via their patient portals, via emails. Oftentimes we are facilitating often a telehealth appointment with their physician so that they can walk them through, let's talk about your symptoms. Because what the physician's trying to do is determine whether or not this person needs testing.
What's a telehealth? You use the word
Yeah.
telehealth. What is that?
This is one of the really positive things that I think is coming out of this pandemic. A telehealth appointment is really a virtual appointment. It's the way you and I are meeting right now. It is either via some sort of mechanism. There are all kinds. Zoom is one. It can range anywhere from just a telephone call to having some sort of video capability. And it is just like your appointment in front of the doctor, where again, you discuss your agenda and the physician asks you questions and really comes up with a plan and or a potential diagnosis for you based on the interaction.
What if he says, oh, I got a lump over here? He's going to look at it through the, probably, huh?
So, that is the one limitation, obviously, that a physical examination cannot happen on a telehealth call. However, I've been involved in many of them over these past few weeks, and I've been so impressed with how much can be accomplished. So, and this is what we do in advance even of these calls. We coach our clients to be the best descriptors of what's going on with their body as they can be. So, your physician might say to you, tell me where that lump is. Now, if they could see you on video, you might be able to show it to them. They might say, is it hard? Is it soft? Is it movable? Is it not? So they will do the best they can. Now, some physicians, it is imperative that someone actually be seen, but that determination will be made during that telehealth appointment. And then again, I've been very impressed with our clients who absolutely have to have in-person appointments with their physicians. Again, the physician practices have outlined tremendous steps to protect both the patient and the providers.
Someone who works in our office said that the doctors said, or the doctors, or whoever it was, said they still send a bill for X number of dollars.
Yes, so this again is one of the things that has happened in this pandemic is that telehealth appointments are being covered by insurance, just like an inpatient appointment. They're doing some disclaimers at the beginning of the appointments just to say this is a telehealth appointment, I can't examine you. Do you agree to all of this? So it's been evolving over these last 3 to 4 weeks. In the beginning, the first week, they weren't quite ready, I have to say. And so I was sending the doctors my Zoom call information or my conference call information, and they were very awkward with it. I would say in a couple of weeks, they've really ramped up and they're much better equipped to perform these appointments.
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say we've come a long way from the doctor coming to your house.
Yes.
right. A lot of the providers are using a HIPAA compliant platform instead of Zoom. In fact, a very good friend of ours, Roberta, we have a friend, Dianne, who's behavioral health specialist, and she does all of her appointments now by, it's not Zoom per se, but it's another HIPAA compliant platform. It works very well.
That's
Very,
right.
very well.
Is that just for doctors, this other thing that she uses? I know what you're talking about. I mean,
Yeah, well, I think it's specifically for people in the medical or medical related professions. But
interesting.
yeah, but it works the same way.
Well, this other one that you know, she says, I have a high co-payment. I don't want a co-payment for a phone call.
Well, again, the world is evolving. If I were to be a futurist right now, I would say that what has happened, there have been a lot of obstacles to telehealth in the past, one of which is how do you maintain confidentiality and people's privacy. I would say that we are going to learn a lot from this experience and that we will have occasion to have telehealth appointments much more readily. When I am really struggling to get some of my older adult clients into downtown Boston, into some of these large medical centers to basically sit down and have a conversation with very minimal physical examination. Well, I'm looking forward to not having to put them through that. So, there's pluses and minuses. There's nothing like being in front of somebody and being there personally, and again, their ability to examine you. But I think there's many occasions when that's not necessary.
And Dianne.
Okay. Sorry, no, you go ahead, Camille.
Yeah. So one of the things that I know you try to guide our clients through is the necessity of an appointment versus being able to postpone an appointment.
That's right. So with each client, we looked at all of the appointments they had that were upcoming, and we categorized them, which were essential. For example, there are clients who are experiencing chemotherapy right now. That's an essential appointment. That's not something you can do over telehealth. So we had to coordinate anything that was essential. People have to go in for infusions or injections, things like that. Then we moved whatever we could to telehealth appointments. And again, those have been going very well. And then there were other things that could just be postponed. And so we postponed those appointments.
Do they keep the telehealth, this was to say, do they keep the telehealth appointment, like if it's 1 o'clock, or are you kept waiting?
I've been so impressed because yesterday I had one, and my client doesn't partake in much technology. So her only capability was a phone call. So I had the physician call me, and then I conferenced her in, and she called me at exactly 10 o'clock, which was exactly our appointment time. And my client was on the phone within 30 seconds, and we had about a 40-minute conversation. I was able to be there as I normally am with my clients because I attend physician appointments with my clients all the time. And so we had, I think, a very productive meeting. This was a specialist. This was a client who has Parkinson's disease and needs appointments every 3 months and medication management. And in fact, she has stimulators in her brain, something called deep brain stimulation. So I was so impressed with how it all went yesterday. And they've all been very good, but I have found the physicians to be very punctual.
What's a grab and go kit?
Yeah.
Someone said.
Oh.
You said about a grab and go kit for ER in the hospital.
Yeah, so we normally have an emergency procedure in place for all of our clients because, again, they're vulnerable and they might have, again, their risk of hospitalization sometimes is high. And so with every client, we have a plan in place. But now we really beefed up those plans. So especially for people who live in the community, again, they might live alone or they might have a spouse. But what we wanted was the ability to facilitate communication very quickly, both to the emergency personnel who might come to your home and also the emergency personnel that you will be interacting with in the emergency department. Now, one thing that's very different during this pandemic and very stressful, or I should say anxiety-provoking and stressful families is that whomever is sick must go to the hospital alone. and I can't run to them. Their family cannot go with them. And this is our means of physical distancing to manage, the prevention of the virus. So it's all the more important that we facilitate communication to the best of our ability. So we created these grab and go kits. And basically it's just a little plastic sleeve with some documents on the inside of it. But, and what has been helpful is that even creating these has helped our clients to think things through. So, we have a face sheet that gives some basic demographic information about our client. But what it also has on the front of it is who is their emergency contact and what is their phone number and how do you text them. So if my mother was going off, it would say that my father was the emergency contact. But for many of our clients, we're the emergency contact. So it gives that information right up front. What it also has on the front of it is just a little blurb about what you should know about Susan or Mary or whomever. And here, I think this is really important. Some of our clients have various sort of idiosyncrasies about their health status. So for example, our client that I just mentioned who has Parkinson's disease, a little blurb that says, Mary has Parkinson's disease and requires her medication every 2 to 2.5 hours or else she will not be able to move. Mary walks with a walker. Mary has deep brain stimulation, so she has batteries in her chest. Something like that. Another client who's had multiple hip dislocations, it might say, this person has had multiple hip dislocations. Please maintain hip precautions. Hip precautions are something that medical personnel know what that means. It's about the angle. You don't want to bend them too much. Somebody else might be very hard of hearing. And you want to say, stand in front of them so that person can read your lips if they don't have their hearing aids in. So little things like that, just to give the emergency personnel some insight into this individual.
Well, how do they go to the hospital alone? I mean,
so, yeah, again, these are very, we are not allowed to go to the hospital. Family members are not allowed to come in. So when emergency personnel go to people's homes, they will say that to the family, you cannot come. We need to take this person. So you're trying to, again, quickly, if you're there, or through this grab and go kit if no one else is there, to communicate to the best of your ability to these emergency personnel.
What if they don't drive?
So this is when emergency personnel come to your home, right? I'm describing that an EMT, we've called the ambulance. And the EMT.
911, in other words, right?
Yes, 911.
They call 911.
Yeah. And we had to do this recently for one of our clients. He had really declined, and we had to call the emergency. He lived alone. At least that packet was there. We then called the emergency room about a half an hour after he left to again introduce ourselves and to say we sent him. We hope the grab and go kit went with him because there are more documents in there as well. But we want to let you know that we're his emergency contact. We'd like to get an update on him. We want to make sure you have our contact information. So there's a lot of enhanced communication that it needs to happen during this time, during this pandemic, but also surrounding anyone who might be hospitalized.
I don't know how they can shut off a spouse or a daughter or whatever. But
That's happening now.
It's happening now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
People are not allowed to go to the hospital. There are no visitors in the hospital. And, it's one of the saddest things. And I'm, I was a nurse in my previous life, and I've cared for a lot of people who've been very sick and who are dying. It puts that much more pressure on the caregivers, the nurses, the doctors, and they've been talking about it a lot in the news. Just that they have to fulfill the role not only of the professional caregiver in whatever role they're in, but they're also filling in for that family member, for that loved one. And especially in dying situations, these people are dying alone. They're not only going to the hospital alone, but they're dying alone. So it's just heartbreaking, totally heartbreaking. So I feel as though our role is to coach our families, to coach our clients, to have them be as prepared as possible, and then to be as communicative as possible with the personnel, the professional personnel in a hospital setting who are caring for our loved ones and or our clients.
Do you ever do a Zoom session for the client with the family members?
They have been, and I've been so impressed with the creativity of these incredible, healthcare professionals. Their Zoom calls have occurred, FaceTime calls, all kinds of means by which they're trying to facilitate communication. One of my very close friends lost her father to this disease, and she said, down in Florida, and she said that the nurses and doctors, had them all on Zoom, so she and her 5 siblings could say goodbye to her father as he was passing.
Oh.
So just heart-wrenching stories where, ordinarily families would be right there by their family member's side, or we sometimes are there by our client's side, and we're not able to be right now. So we're doing the best we can with the tools we have.
And Dianne, what about the emotional consequences, the emotional impact for people who even may not have coronavirus right now, but they're isolated because they can't have the regular people coming in, at least not as often as they usually do? Have you had any insight into that at all?
Yes, definitely. I have 85 and 86-year-old parents who live in Florida, and at least they have each other, right? They haven't been out of the house in weeks.
How do they do their shopping? Do they get it delivered?
Well, I was just about to say, except for my father does still go to the grocery store. But this is some of the problem solving we have to do with our clients. We have set up grocery deliveries. We have set up prescription deliveries. Again, there's a lot of problem solving that needs to happen. But in terms of the emotional toll, it's a very difficult time. So, we just try to find creative ways to stay connected. I've been, again, so impressed with some of the entities out there who are being creative with Zoom calls,
Fascinating.
People who have dementia. They've been doing some of the family support groups, and they've just moved them all to online.
Great. I gotta interrupt you again. This went by so fast, but it's time for Camille to wind up.
Okay.
And you've been wonderful.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, where do you see yourself? You look great.
Thank you.
Camille,
your turn.
Okay, well, Dianne, thank you so very much. And by the way, for our viewers, I work with Dianne. I'm the insurance specialist of the Healthassist practice. Very proud to say. And Dianne, it's been wonderful to have you. To our viewers, please let us know if you'd like more information about some of the things that Dianne's talked about during this coronavirus. We'd be happy to share them with you. Just send us an email. And Dianne, you're always welcome to come back as things evolve during this crisis. It'd be lovely to have you again. So to our viewers, thank you again for watching. And please let us hear from you if you have any questions, any guidance, or any other topics you'd like to hear about, especially now. Because remember, this is your show, the law, your money, and you.
You. All of you.
All of you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.